I'm Carol Looper. I'm a member of CMC's Board of Trustees, and I call myself a retired reporter because I don't think News Junkie would look particularly good on there. Very happy to see everyone here today. Today, the Columbus Metropolitan Club, in collaboration with the Columbus Dispatch, presents The Future of Education, sponsored by the Columbus Foundation, Columbus State Community College, Dispatch Media Group, and in partnership with League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Columbus. All of those organizations are represented here by many friends and associates, and let's take a moment to thank them and to welcome And now we welcome Kelly Griesmer, Senior Vice President at the Columbus Foundation. She will come and introduce our forum. Kelly?
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Columbus Metropolitan Club, for convening today's conversation. The Columbus Foundation is very excited to announce that the Big Give is back. It's been 2.5 years since the last Big Give, and this is set to be the biggest yet. We have more than 800 nonprofit organizations from 10 different Central Ohio counties that are eligible to benefit from your generosity. And that's a change. It used to be Franklin County, but we know that our MSA is a generous place, and we wanted to include all the donors and all the nonprofits doing good. So we've also put together a bonus pool of greater than $1.3 million to amplify all the gifts that are made during the Big Give, with every part of the donations that you make going to those nonprofits, meaning we are waiving the credit card fees and paying those ourselves, and we will also be amplifying every single gift with a pro rata share of that bonus pool. So every single nonprofit will get 100% plus, as we say. So we're so excited to do this. Mark your calendars. We have those things on the all the table tents out there to remind you. But it starts on October 10th at 10 a.m. and goes through October 11th at 12 p.m. It's a 26-hour giving rally this time because we thought it might be easier to remember 10:10 at 10 until 10:11 at 12. So if you get confused, just count it up. We really hope that you're ready to go big and be kind, show your generosity to all these Central Ohio nonprofits, including CMSC, during the Big Give. And we also hope, if you're looking out there right now, we have an Instagram contest. So if there's a nonprofit, they can pick up a circle at the Columbus Foundation and do a creative Instagram post. And we will be awarding $1,500 grants every day leading up to the Big Give for the most creative entries as chosen by our promotional partners and other foundation partners. So please take a look at watch social media for those as well. And we look forward to your participation. So on to the discussion today. As the world changes around us, we know that technology, society, work, and social norms change with it. While the old world knew reading, writing, and arithmetic, the new world knows coding, collaborating, and culture, and many other things. Education must evolve. How and what that will look like, we hope to get a glimpse of a bit of the future in our conversation today. Please welcome two experts and forward thinkers on education, Ohio Superintendent of Public Instruction, Paolo DiMario, and leading the discussion today, President and CEO of the PASS Foundation, Annalise Corbin. Annalise, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kelly and Carol and CMC. On behalf of both Paolo and I, we are very excited to be here today to engage in this conversation about the future of education in Ohio, and more broadly than that as well. As we get started on all of that, just a quick opportunity to say that when I personally think about the future of education, it's with great hope and optimism.
Amen, amen.
And when we think about all the things that are to come, we realize it's complex. Yet it's going to be a wonderful journey along the way because we have amazing thinkers in and around the state of Ohio and the landscape of education to help us get there. But I am wondering, as we start this conversation as the superintendent of instruction, what do you think about when you contemplate the future of education in Ohio?
Well, in many respects, it's exactly the same thing. You know, because as I look across this room, I think this is what will drive the future of education. Everybody in this room. And you may have a hard time seeing your part. Obviously, some people see themselves more directly as part of the future. You've got Columbus City Schools here. You've got a number of charter school operators and administrators. You've got people that support those systems directly. But then if you think about it, everybody else in this room, give me 2.8 seconds, and I will tell you how you have a vested interest in creating the future. And I think that's the other part that's so hopeful and so exciting is that I've never met a person that doesn't say, I don't care about education, I don't care about the future of our society as defined by the children that will become our future, and are willing to, while there may be areas where we have differences of opinion, the vast, vast majority of the educational landscape are things that we can agree on, and we can all find ways to contribute to and drive towards improvement.
Absolutely, thank you. One of the things that we sort of think about collectively in that vein, as it relates to everybody cares about education, because at the end of the day it matters to all of us on so many different levels. And one of the big conversations that at Pass Foundation that we have all the time is really thinking about the intersection between the world we live in, the world of business and industry, the world of post-secondary, K-12, our community, and how all of those systems interlock and interline. And quite frankly, we know that one of the single biggest drivers in a lot of the decision making and the direction that we collectively go with our schools and our communities has to do with our economy, our local economy, and the whole notion that we are contemplating what do those jobs of tomorrow look like.
And we're seeing so much change in the economy. I mean, my guess is we could go around this room and come up with 100 different things that are fundamentally driving economic change. And it starts, I think about when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, there were a lot, you needed money, you go to a bank. You wanted to book an airline ticket, you called, Delta's reservation counter, you called People's Express, you called TWA, you called Pan Am, most of which don't exist anymore. You had to figure out, you couldn't compare prices, you had to do it all on your own. You called a hotel chain or 3 or 4. So much of what we've seen change. Think of all those reservation specialists at Delta that no longer do that work. Think of all the telephone operators that no longer do that work. Think of the people that used to print the yellow pages that no longer do that work. Think of all the banks that have been replaced by ATMs. I can buy stock without using a broker anymore. Think of the big changes that's made to the financial services sector. Each one of you could probably come up with a dozen different ways that huge sectors of our economy have changed by virtue of technology, the internet, changes in the democratization of commerce. And the problem is, there's just more to come. The things that are going to happen in the next 10 years, the next 15 years. One of the things I distributed was this little one-pager, which when I saw it, it was one of those graphs that, you have this aha moment and you just want to study it for like an hour because it shows you, what are those jobs that are likely to be automated? What are the relative educational levels of the different jobs that are prone to be automated and not automated? What are their pay levels and so forth and so on? And it just tells the story. Retail is going to be hugely different. Transportation is going to be hugely different. Lots of people who work in these sectors are going to find themselves having to find different ways to support themselves. And this is what our students are walking into. They will either come in at the front end of that change, they will come in the middle of the change, or they will come into periods where there's even more change happening that we can't even graph or understand right now. And all those different phenomena are going to necessitate the education system saying, how can we prepare our students to succeed in this ambiguity, in this change, and still knowing that they're going to be successful, they can be successful, and we want them to be successful because ultimately we're going to be relying on that.
And there's a continuous pathway, right? As we think about the growth of workforce and the giant questions that we have around what those industries and the future, if you will, of what we're going to be doing. I mean, we think about it with smart cities right here in Columbus, right? And the variety of things that are on the table right now as concepts and ideas that we have this opportunity to dig right into. We don't really know what the future holds.
That's right.
And we see that reflected every day, both in our students and the things that the students can do. I like to think of a lot of the different opportunities for our students and their role in actually being part of that exciting unknown in the sense of really, really digging in and the things that they can participate in.
Right.
We had students, for example, yesterday participating in the Singularity University Smart Cities Accelerator. And we're really excited about that because we've not seen students participate in those types of activities before.
Yeah.
And what business and industry tells us from that experience is we had no idea that these students were capable of not just engaging in the conversation with us, but actually coming up with solutions. We had one of the students who on the fly, through part of that conversation yesterday, says to one of these teams who is in the accelerator because they have a great, brilliant idea, well, that's really awesome. I could just code that right now. And she starts to pull out her laptop from her backpack.
I never cease to be amazed at our students.
Yeah.
Because they will invariably not only meet and exceed the expectations you have with them, but just blow you away in terms of their creativity, their capability to see things from different angles and to develop interesting, innovative solutions and have interesting, innovative ideas.
And part of that, of course, is because they're a different set of students.
are.
To your point earlier, we're going to have students entering this continuum at multiple points, but as a system, that system of education, however we want to ultimately define it, the other thing that we know is generationally our students are changing. They're changing all the time, and we have to be able to meet the needs of our students and also meet them where they are based on their experience and their interest in those things that engage them. And this next generation of students, we've not seen anything like this before, seeing all our school folks, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and it's exactly that thing about engaging them, right?
Yeah.
Because students are going to be students and do the things they want to do. The thing I love is that they love to learn. They love discovery. They love exploration. We are not dragging someone in and saying, okay, well, now we're going to force you to do this really uncomfortable thing called learning or discovery. They are predisposed to want to do that. The challenge to us as the adults in the room is to say, how do we take that natural inborn desire to explore and discover and really harness it and catalyze it and accelerate it in ways that are meaningful? Because I think this is where students will be less forgiving of us, is if we don't make it interesting, if we don't make it relevant, if we don't enable it with technology, if we don't recognize and respect their capabilities and their capacities to go out there. Remember, these are all, these are digital natives. They grew up with, they were born with a smartphone in their hand and understanding how to interact with technology on every level. They know that's a very just in time. If I want to know something, it's funny, I have these kids, my kids are grown now, but I'll have, I'll be with them and we'll talk about something, and you can have answers in seconds about what's this building or what's the history of that or what happened here. So they're very used to going out and finding their information, finding what they want to know, finding what they need to know. They have a certain creativity that I think has been enabled by things like Facebook and social media. They're posting videos, they're reacting to things, they're laughing, they're crying, they're sharing their emotions. You have this socialization that happens in a very different way than socialization happened when I was back in school, and that's not a bad thing. Those are all things, capacities, dispositions, skills, and abilities that we can harness, and I think it's up to us to sort of identify, working frankly with students and listening to them, how do we amplify and take advantage of those natural dispositions in helping guide them and creating those conditions where they can continue to acquire knowledge and skills that ultimately lead them to be successful.
And ultimately, that's what our business and industry partners are coming back to us to circle all the way back around as it relates to growth in the economy. They're saying these are the types of folks that we need. I think we have the advantage, too, when we step back and look at the generation in our schools right now, elementary, middle, high school. I like to think of this particular group of kids as somewhat unique in the sense that they are not pilots. Right? So much if we think about the emerging technology over, let's say, the last 15 years, lots and lots of new things happening all the time, and new stuff happening every day today at a rapid rate. But it doesn't scare these kids because they have lived their entire lifetimes with the expectation not only that we're going to have that rapid change in technology applied to their lives, but it's not in pilot phase, right? They were not the first to have the cell phone. They were not, all these things just exist for them. And so I think that gives them a sense of fearlessness that we haven't necessarily seen to the same degree before. And again, the example I provided about the accelerator yesterday, those kids didn't think twice about inserting themselves in an industry-based experience and opportunity because they're very comfortable in that space. and that's
And
what
in dealing
industry
with the
wants.
ambiguity that comes with it, right? I mean, they're adaptable,
Absolutely.
they're flexible, but which is then a challenge to us because very many of our structures are pretty rigid. You know, we all understand that, and a lot of people will joke about, you know, the way we deliver education in this country is pretty much the same way as we've been doing it for, you know, since the beginning, you know, 200 years ago. Although I will debate that point somewhat. But using that ambiguity, I think you're starting to see the emergence of different ways of education. And those ways sort of break down some of our standard stereotypes. They go beyond the school walls. They engage partners much more seriously. Every one of you, I see many people in this room that are partners in education, even though their tag may not say anything about education. And it's that kind of, those kind of sort of break down the walls experiences that are really going to allow these students, in spite of their abilities to address ambiguity, to really go to greater heights and move further along. Because I think it ultimately takes advantage of their natural dispositions and actually what we know about, you know, learning science and how students learn and how to really equip them with those knowledge and skills to be successful.
Absolutely, and it also is going to require, at the same time, that we step back and rethink the role of the instructor. And I use that term very, very loosely rather than teacher, the instructor, in the sense that it doesn't matter if it's a traditional classroom, if it's after school, if it's a mentor, if it's your local community center. At the end of the day, we are surrounded by folks with opportunity to provide us with experience, guidance, mentorship, and instruction, right? But how is this rigid system going to be able to adapt quickly enough? And at the end of the day, I think that's one of the big giant questions. How can we do this fast enough and effective, at the same time maintaining all the sets of controls we have to have so that we can ensure that those instructors feel ready for this?
It's one of the things we don't give our current system credit enough for. It's that human element, right? I mean, because people are saying, well, you know, if they want to learn about the Civil War, they can do that on the internet. Like, you know, all the learning, people are wanting to push everything to technology, but we forget how hugely important that human element of interaction is. Because, you know, the research is very clear. I think that the more we take humans out of the education equation, the more challenging it really becomes. The research is clear about a student needs to have a caring adult. Now, what happens among the adults in an educational setting may be different than what it is today, but their presence and their importance and the way they engage students and interact with them, I think, is going to go through a transformation. And in some ways, you know, I don't want to say we're going to do away with this role and have much more of this role. I think it's an evolution of what the educational role is about. I think you're exactly right about, you know, I see all these strong mentoring programs, and both the mentor and the mentee come out with huge gains in a whole host of skill sets, some of which are the standard, you know, language arts skills, mathematics, science, and so forth and so on. But some of which are that other skill set that really amplifies what these kids already have, but is going to be so fundamental in terms of their success is, you know, the what I call the, you know, real world readiness skills, collaboration, working together in teams, being creative, critical thinking, synthesis, analysis, and so forth and so on, as well as the social emotional skills. Empathy, self-regulation, persistence, you know, how to deal with ambiguity, how to deal with failure, how to, you know, manage your own emotional state in order to, you know, continue to survive and be successful in the context of a social interaction. So I think you're seeing this evolution of the role of adults and how adults interact with the system, but then you also see an expansion of the kinds of dispositions and skills that we want to amplify and develop in students because those are going to be hugely important in their future success.
It is going to be important, but we also have to work on some of the stereotypical mindsets associated with the opportunity, quite frankly. It truly is an opportunity facing all of these students today in the sense that they have a different set of choices to make. And again, you know, as it relates to those instructors, those mentors, those teachers, helping them also within that set of systems understand the great diversity of those choices. So whether we're talking about students going directly into industry, earning stackable certs to get there, in meaningful careers, or, you know, the changing tenor of career tech, post-secondary, and the way all of those different pieces intersect and provide opportunity for students, again, it's going to take an awful lot of infusing into those systems.
I think the other thing we're going to see is very much a sort of personalization of the education experience. And the reason I say that too is because one of the fundamental things that the education system has got to figure out is the whole equity issue. Because I think right now, as we talk about school improvement, you know, when I look at the numbers and I look at the data, you know, school improvement is really about helping the students that we aren't doing well enough by currently. And that's not a negotiable. That is an imperative, because everyone comes to the schoolhouse with their own set of experiences and realities. And increasingly, because I want to give credit to the people that are doing this so well right now even, and my job is to help stimulate it, do more, learn more, and keep that iterative continuous learning loop moving forward as we improve practice in this state. Is identifying what are some of those realities and barriers that students bring with them to the classroom. What are the strategies and techniques that help us overcome those barriers, unlock the learning aptitudes of those students in the experience they're about to have in that school setting, or if it's a work-based experience setting or some other learning setting, so that we can make sure that we maximize the opportunity for every student to be successful. And I think we see, even though the average data tends to mask some of the successes that we have, there are places that are doing exactly that, providing the extra supports, providing the, adopting trauma-informed practices, adopting culturally sensitive instructional approaches, creating circumstances that engage the student, overcome their barriers, provide them that additional support to ultimately create the conditions so that that natural ability to discover, explore, and advance can actually take off.
So one of the other things that there's been lots and lots of conversation all the time, I know both of us hear this frequently, we'll circle back around to the questions about technology. The recent story talked about all these jobs that are being taken over because of technology, and you and I have had the conversation about technology and new jobs based on technology just means new jobs for humans to do that are really important as it relates to all of those components, and all that also translates into very, very early learning and opportunities in the classroom. So how best to manage emerging technology, and back to your question about access and equity and inclusion as it relates to, we're a big state, we've got lots of students here, we've got lots and lots of schools, we've got giant urban schools and we've got very remote rural schools, and how do we help equalize that question? Because it comes up, we get it all the time.
Well, I think one of the great things I'm so happy about is that the cost of technology is coming down all the time. So increasingly, you're seeing districts across the spectrum doing one-to-one, whether it's Chromebooks, laptops, whatever, and knowing very well that technology, again, as part of a broader and integrated pedagogical strategy, instructional strategy, is an important component, and they're doing it. There still are pockets of the state that have issues with connectivity, especially at home. Not in the school buildings. The school buildings are pretty well connected. But so that means some of those opportunities are diminished. But in some ways, I think the offset of that is the school buildings being seen as much more of a community hub. Exactly. Kids will spend more time there. Kids will find places in other settings, whether it's the libraries or even businesses that they're interacting with, to have that access and use it to supplement their learning. And they're also, I think we also, the bureaucracy of education always lags. I think kids are understanding and learning and using technology way before it almost dawns on us about how do we factor that into the educational experience. So part of our job is to watch and understand and learn and get in the heads of our students and in the world around them to make sure what we're doing engages them and is relevant to the challenges that they face, and also the enablement of technology that they're experiencing.
Right, and also recognize that almost every single one of our students actually has technology in their pocket, in their backpack, in their purse, right? And that as we think about the role and use of that and how we mentor them to properly use both the device itself, right, and what they're learning through all of that as the key components with all of that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the emerging pathways or opportunities that we're really starting to see broadly across the state for students that allow them access into early workforce or career exploration. It's very different than it was 10 years ago. We see it all over the state. Schools talking about pathway programs, talking about career tech, talking about the true opportunities to engage in business and industry very early in their academic career, so that they have a sense of who and what, right, they might want to be. So let's talk a little bit about where we see that going. What impact is that going to have?
Yeah, and I think it's also valuable to talk about why it's happening, right?
Exactly.
I mean, and to me, there are two primary reasons. One is because, hands-on learning is more engaged learning.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn a lot more about triangles if I'm there building a roofing truss for a house, and I have to make the computations about how long to cut the piece of wood. Oh, triangles and calculations now make sense to me. Or if I'm putting in a plumbing line, or if I'm having to compute, looking at an actuarial table and trying to figure out how to price, an insurance policy. The relevancy of that kind of work-based experience or career disposition, and kids also understand that life, has this element of the thing that you do. What is your vocation? What is your passion? What are you going to do? And so that element of relevancy makes for a much more meaningful educational experience, and it's stickier when there's that connection. The other thing, and this is equally as important, is the business community is beginning to increasingly step up and say, not only do we want to be involved in schools, but we have an interest in making sure students know about the things that we do, the things that we need, the kind of skills and dispositions that make for a successful engagement between a worker and an employer, and we're willing to step up and play that role. And I think that's a huge part of it. And so to your question, then, I think we're going to increasingly see that happen. We're seeing it. Many of the urban areas are doing exactly, that kind of thing, converting whole high schools into career-focused academies. They're doing it in Cleveland. They're doing it in Akron. Cincinnati's doing it. Columbus is doing some of those things here as well. And again, part of that's bringing very strong business partners to the table, creating those opportunities. Because it's okay to talk about career exploration in front of a video screen. It's okay to talk about having people visit you that do certain work. But there's nothing quite like going to Nationwide Children's and being a part of a team doing a job, and understanding the requirements, the demands, the camaraderie, the socialization that is required in order to make that successful. And so. And it's not just big employers. Sometimes people have this misconception that only big employers can afford to have interns or do that kind of experience. Even the smallest, we're seeing smaller employers doing a lot, because they also see the value. Kids bring value to the work that's happening in those businesses, and that's seen as a very important value add as well.
I agree, and that's actually one of the things that's very near and dear to our hearts at PAST, in the sense that we know that as soon as you can immerse kids in solving real-world problems, the light bulbs go on, they're truly engaged. I love the stickiness. And as we have more and more business and industry partners coming to the table, whether they be in the nonprofit, the after-school, the traditional school world, helping them understand how to truly interface in that K-12 experience or after-school experience is really critically important. I mean, I think one of the things that we have learned over and over again in our journey in this work has really been that business and industry wants to be involved in a meaning and tangible way. They oftentimes don't know how.
Right.
It's not that they just want to write a check, right, to help support the school, right? They would really rather find another way to write their check and do something with the school, right? Very, very meaningful and tangible. But the other side of that coin, of course, is that the K-12 system often doesn't know how to interact with them, right?
We found that
and
when we did some survey work, we found exactly the same phenomenon. Both sides really want to do more work together, but both sides struggle because they didn't really know how. And I think we see that as part of the department's role is,
Right.
you know, we can be a broker, we can be a convener, we can put out simple, you know, and some of it's as simple as, hey, pick up the phone. It's rare to find a business person that won't talk to a school. It's rare to find an educator that won't talk to business if they reach out.
Right, absolutely, and help them all understand it's more than showing up and talking about my career and talking about my industry, but really how can I tangibly engage this, even a single classroom or an after-school set in solving a problem that me as an industry, I am actively engaging in, because even the tiniest mind can be so incredibly creative.
And I think the business community, some are seeing it as also, you know, a workforce development pipeline creation, because they understand, hey, you know, how many times do I get an employer calling me saying, I've got 100 openings? And I'm beginning to try to help people to reconfigure how they think about, don't tell me you've got 100 openings and you've posted and you're waiting for the workforce to come to you.
Exactly.
Go out there, start developing so that you know when you need 10 people, that you've got 10 people about to come to you because they were interns in your shop, they saw you in their school buildings, they came during, you know, special things, they did some meaningful work for you, and oh, lo and behold, they're ready to be your entry level, you know, XYZ. Plus, you've got a tuition assistance program that'll help them succeed in their college, and they see. Sometimes we think these are the students that are going to change jobs and they really don't have any loyalty. I think we underestimate that people will, in fact, have a lot of loyalty if they feel like there's a caring and a concern. They're part of a family or a community. And I think the businesses that are beginning to understand that and nurture that are seeing the benefits, you know, in terms of their workforce pipeline.
I tell every business that walks through the doors, you are investing in your future workforce. You know, it's not about whether you're giving your community philanthropy dollars to help support X, Y, or Z. Think about all of that very, very differently. You're investing in the future workforce. That's HR, that's marketing, that's the actual technical skills trade. There are a million different ways that you can interact with all of that.
Annalise, I want to say one other thing, because I want to take us a little bit back to the what happens in the classroom, and I think it fits right into with this conversation, because I think what you're also seeing in the schools is this transformation from sort of these silos, these unconnected silos of your English class, your math class, your science class, to integration, project-based learning, problem-based learning, design engineering kind of learning, because that is ultimately what kids will find when they hit the workforce. And so that not only gets at helping them, because it's many of the same things I said about career learning is the same thing. You're in a more engaged setting, you're working on a problem, you're working in teams, so you're building those real world skills, you're building those social emotional skills, you're building your academic understanding and your content knowledge, and you're doing it in a way that's really meaningful. And then when you hit the ground in a work setting, you become, you know, you're gonna fit right in. And this is true even if you go to college, you're gonna fit right in terms of successfully interacting, learning, and contributing to the success of that organization.
Absolutely. So we're going to move to audience questions in just a few minutes. Don't be shy. Please go ahead and step up to the microphone, which you'll find right over here. One final thought as we get ready to move on. How do you think we are going to ultimately see ourselves in that sort of 20-year space down the road? What are we going to be collectively doing that relates back to some of the decision making that we made today?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to be doing, we're going to be loving doing things that look a lot more individualized than we do now, right? So I mean, as I think about maybe summarizing what we've just talked about, right? It's first we have to understand the students and be willing to, you know, not only meet them at their own level, but understand that the supports and the care and the climate that we create for them and with them, frankly, is going to be different, and it's going to be very much tuned into the individual realities that they face. How we nurture in them the acquisition of knowledge and skills is also going to be different. It's going to be career-based. It's going to be project-based. It's going to be much more integrated, because we're going to want to engage them more, and we're going to want to show them, and they're going to want to see the relevancy. We're going to bring many more partners to the table. You're going to have healthcare people in your buildings. You might have social service providers in your buildings. You're going to have work businesses in your buildings, helping support the fundamental educational experience, but also giving them students a broader understanding of what happens outside school, and also building in them some of the supports and the skills that they need in some of these other domains that will likely serve them very well in college and in the workplace. So I mean, if you try to meld all those things together, the difference of the who, the what, the how, we will do a lot of the same things that we do, but it will look very different, and in some ways be a lot more flexible, which can be intimidating. But I think what we'll ultimately find out is it's very energizing, because the success that we'll see will make it energizing.
Absolutely. It's really my hope that I can walk into a community and say, where's your school? I'm trying to find your school. And the response will be, well, what kind of experience are you looking for? Right? So that we can direct you to the right place inside of our community where school is happening, because it's no longer just a place. The place can still be there, and it's got lots of functions, but really the place is the entire community. It's very broadly engaged. It's fully interactive. Yeah. That's my hope, that I have to look really hard to find what we think about as school.
Well, and I think the flip side is I'll walk into a business and I'll see some young people there, and I'll say, gee, are you really old enough to work here? and the business head will come out and say, yeah, well, you know, we have a really good partnership with XYZ Middle School. These kids run my IT shop, you know, or these kids are helping build our webpage, or these kids are, you know, whatever it is, because I think that too will affirm for me that we have crossed that bridge from school as it used to be to school as it needs to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to move on to questions now. It is the CMC's tradition to take audience questions. So please state your name, ask your question, and in consideration of everyone, please stick to the questions rather than editorialize. We would appreciate that very much. So first question.
Yes, my name is Kwesi Cambone. I appreciate your comments about equity, because I served as the equity director in Columbus City Schools. But my question to you is about the state report card. At a recent board meeting in the Columbus City Schools, there was a comment that perhaps the district should join with other districts to sue the state because of the report card, and there was a comment.
I generally advise against that kind of thing.
But also there
that
was,
means you're going to sue me.
there was a comment saying that parents are increasingly not paying attention to the report card. So I just wanted to get your feedback on.
Yeah, you know, as you can imagine, the report card is always, I mean, we could spend 2 hours talking about the report card. I'm going to latch onto the thing you said at the end. Parents aren't always paying attention to the report card. Part of me says, good, right? Part of me says good. Part of me says be informed by the report card, but don't let it be the only thing. And I'm going to tell my own personal story. I'm a proud parent. Both my kids went to Columbus Public Schools, K-8. During a time, we didn't have A through F grades back then. We had academic emergency, academic watch, all those categories. The district, I think at the time, was in academic emergency or academic watch. The schools my kids went to, I frankly don't remember. I could pull out how they were rated. But I made my choice because I went to the school. I was impressed by the leadership. I was impressed by the climate that was created among the staff, the cohesiveness of the vision around the instructional practices. I was talking to other parents. I talked to other students. I came away. Now, I won't say that I was you know, that was the case in every school I visited, but because every student and every parent has their own sense of what they're looking for. But I came away with the fact that you know, what's going on here, in spite of what the report card may say, is a great educational experience. And sure enough, both my kids got great educational experience. First at Douglas Alternative, which is no longer here, unfortunately, and then the Arts Impact Middle School, which continues to run a great program right there on the campus of Fort Hays. I then sent my kids to the Graham School. I know Greg Brown is here, so a charter school. So I have my one foot in the charter school community, again, because I visited, I talked to the leadership, I talked to the faculty, I talked to other parents, I talked to other students, and what I came to understand, I probably looked at the report card for both those institutions, but there's so much more to do to understand. And one of the things we try at the department to message is to say exactly that. Don't simply judge on the basis of report cards. And I also caution the media. You know, don't be so quick to just feel glad to print all the letter grades and then walk away, right? You owe it to your community to tell the more nuanced story, because that's I admire the Dispatch and other newspapers, not because they can tell the fluff story, the easy story. Tell the harder story. Show where the improvement is. Understand what makes the difference in schools, which schools are on a positive trajectory, and use that to make sure the community understands that there's great education happening in this community and there's great education happening in every part of the state.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Phil Hayes, and I couldn't agree more with everything the superintendent said. My concern is, and this is not opinion, but it does relate to the question, that ultimately the two drivers in any form of education are going to be testing, which was not mentioned, and also the equity, which was mentioned. So my question to the superintendent is, thinking about those two drivers,
Can you say the second driver? You said testing and then?
assessment, testing, and
yeah.
equity, or resources,
equity,
which
resources.
oftentimes equates to funding at the state level. What do you see your future vision and role of the state superintendent's office to positively address both of those things?
Many people try to assign to the state superintendent's office a lot more power than it has. So let's just set the record straight. That,
I know,
every,
you don't
every
make
time I
the
read
law.
something, the state superintendent should go do this, it's like, I wish I could. But I get what your question is about. Let's talk about testing first, right? I'm a strong believer that being able to assess the knowledge and skills that a student has acquired is important. And yet what frustrates me is that we rely exclusively on standardized testing to do that, when I believe, and I think there are in existence, other ways to assess what a student knows and is able to do. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, this state will make some progress in migrating to what some of those other strategies are like. There are educational partners in the room that are already doing some of that. It's through portfolios, it's through presentations, capstone projects, project-based, performance-based assessments that don't really look like standardized tests, but are assessments as students go through a controlled experience around a project. So I think that there will continue to be, however, a place, I think, for standardized assessment, because it gives us a level of information, especially when it comes to the equity question, that we need to have. I tell people that the primary purpose of the report card and the assessment system, some people say, well, I don't get the test results back quick enough so I can change what I'm doing in the classroom. The state tests aren't designed to do that. The state tests are designed to give the state information about the performance of the system so that it can identify where it needs to provide additional technical support or policy, address policy issues that support the trajectory of continuous improvement. So that's the testing side. The funding issue is a little bit, again, it could be a multi-hour conversation. What I tell people, and this comes from my own background as work as a consultant, is that I rarely find a school that I walk into that is either high functioning or has been able to turn itself around, saying, oh, we just got $3,000 more per kid and we're spending that and now we're better, right? It goes beyond money. And so the first thing we have to do is understand that practice trumps finance every time. It's what you do in the school, as few dollars as you have. And to me, there are miracle places out there, and many of them are charter schools because the natural funding system for charters disadvantages. All charters are funded at a lesser rate than traditional public schools. They all work at a funding disadvantage, but yet they do amazing things because they are relentlessly focused on the practice of educating students. So I think the first order of business is to continue to drive ourselves to make sure that the way we're spending the dollars that we do have is in as excellent a way and yielding the greatest return on investment. Because frankly, I think once we do that, it makes it easier to have the conversations about additional funding if you know that the dollars are going to be invested in systems that are already highly tuned in terms of the educational outcomes that they're getting. The second half of that conversation speaks to the fundamental underlying financial structures. On the one hand, we can't expect the state and local tax bases to continually be expected to step up and add, disproportionately, grow at a faster rate than the overall tax base grows at. At the same time, it becomes a question of distribution of resources, as many in Columbus will remind me about, the caps and those kinds of things. And again, those are politically challenging and difficult issues that, again, it will take a community across the entire state to, make some of the tough choices about redistribution of resources in the interest of making sure that we're appropriately financing education in the right ways across the state.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Bob Gervaisi. I'm the president of Ohio Dominican University.
Great.
I appreciated your comments about striking an appropriate balance between technology and the human element in education. And on a very practical level, do you have any thoughts about how we can teach our children and ourselves about striking the right balance between paying attention and interacting effectively with other people as opposed to paying attention to our cell phones, so that our children can learn that other people have a greater claim on our attention and that they're not just optional alternatives to
Yeah.
what's on the screen?
That's a great question.
Turn it off.
Yeah, well, that is my answer. Part of it is actually being deliberate about it, right? I mean, I think for a long time, like some of the social emotional learning skills and those kind of things, we've always sort of thought that they're important, but we've never really said to ourselves. And I love what I'm seeing in schools nowadays. People are becoming very deliberate about, what good behavior is. What bad behavior is. They're calling each other out. They're creating that culture within their classrooms that kids will manage each other about what good behavior is, what not so good behavior is, and so forth and so on. And I think we can do more of that even ourselves as we interact with students. Tell students, hey, look, we're going to be putting you, we're taking you to a nursing home. We're going to put you with some old people who want to hear from you, and we want you to chronicle their history, and we don't want you to do it electronically. So you're going to have to listen carefully, and you might have trouble understanding, but we want you to work together. Help them understand the value of that human interaction, and also then the appropriateness, right? Because sometimes we also don't call people out and saying, you know what? It's just inappropriate that you do that. And when I think about my own self and some of the lessons I learned about what was appropriate and what was inappropriate, it kind of happened in really obscure, kind of below the radar screen ways. And I think we should feel okay to elevate those and say, you know what, it's not appropriate to do this. It's okay that you did this. This is, we'll approach it with a growth mindset. But when you're in this kind of setting and you're doing this kind of thing, yeah, it's okay, you got to put that away or behave in this certain way or wear certain clothes or what have you. And that's part of what getting along is all about. So some of it's just being, and I think I love what we're doing in the social emotional space because we're starting to call those things out. What is critical thinking? What is collaboration? What is self-regulation? I had a couple experiences with kids who are so insightful about their own histories. I used to be very, misbehave a lot, and now I know when somebody does this, and I feel myself I know how to, and I think, oh my God, this is so cool that a young student actually understands that. When if you asked me to do that when I was that age, I would have had no idea.
Yeah, I would add to that the other strategy I think that's critically important in this is to do those things with your kids,
yeah.
and have them do those things with you, because I think there's sometimes a tangible disconnect, right? Your kids can help you better regulate and you can help them better regulate if you both understand fully how we're interacting individually and culturally with that piece of technology.
Some of it's modeling good behavior. I have trouble getting my
Absolutely.
staff to put their cell phones down when they're in meetings with me.
That's right, turn it off.
Go ahead.
Okay.
My name is Franklin Conaway. I do some teaching from the college level down to the third grade level.
Excellent.
My question is it still important for students to learn how to write well in the English language?
Yes, more than ever, unequivocally, yes, yes, yes. I still think today that being able to write and communicate well is the single, and Lisa Pat McDaniel's smiling because she knows how I feel about this, is the single most important skill set that anybody can bring to any occupation, bar none. And you're right in pointing it out because I still think Lisa and I would co-teach classes at Ohio State, and there were some great writers, but there were always those that it was like, just the basic structuring of a good sentence, putting those together in a solid paragraph, putting those together in a reasonable argument that has decent flow, and being able to kind of go from premise to conclusion. It's stuff that we as a system and as a nation can do better on. But yes, it is very important.
And at the end of the day, think about the fact that we can't learn a new language. Well, let's use coding and computers as a perfect example if we don't understand the fundamental basics of our own communication system, right? And so I think that that's one of those key things that, context is everything. And the context in our reading and writing and our communication skills are going to allow us to make the leap into the next sets of communications, writing, coding, you name it. They're all
Yeah,
related.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also worth saying that a lot of people, we hear from a lot of businesses saying, well, I need kids that show up on time and are
Right.
persistent, and they tend to rattle off those real world skills. But the English language arts, mathematics, scientific method, use of technology, those are skill sets that are non-negotiable. We cannot step back and say, well, we really don't need to nurture those because we need these things over here. Those are important. Increasingly mathematics, because you can be a great writer, but if you can't interpret a graph or include a data table in your writing, you are at a distinct disadvantage from everybody else. You need to have enough understanding, especially in statistics and that kind of thing, to be able to not only communicate it, but understand it when you see it.
Fundamentals. Thank you.
This is our last question.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Jen Altman. Thank you so much for staying to take my question. My question is about teacher training and retraining. So I love the vision you've laid out, and I'm wondering how you see how we can approach teacher training and especially teacher retraining for teachers who've been, who are in the classroom right now, for a future that looks like what you've described. Thanks.
Well, so, let's start with the premise that I think Ohio has amazing teachers. And, the one thing I have come to hugely appreciate about those working in education is we're constantly on the lookout for getting better. We're always looking to get better. So even teachers that have been, in the trenches for a long period of time are always looking for ways to hone their skills. They're actually very communicative with new teachers coming in because they knew those new teachers are kind of getting the latest and the best. They're open to things like trauma-informed practices and so forth and so on. Now, not to say all of them are, but the vast majority, and I don't think we give them enough credit, are open to those kind of things, are changing, are improving, and could easily find their way in the vision that we've painted here. The preparation is also an interesting phenomenon because I think we constantly rack our brains about this thing called teacher preparation and what does it need to have. And I think, again, higher ed gets a bad rap because a lot of people say, I'm not getting teachers aren't ready when they hit the ground. But hitting the ground is really different than what you can do in the classroom. So many of the colleges are getting students in their colleges of education out into the field sooner.
Right.
And they're doing it in much more collaborative ways and a lot more extensive kinds of, you're there for the year and you're splitting your time between campus and that school because you need to see the arc of the year in order to understand it. I think, though, that there are some things that we don't do well enough in the teacher prep field, particularly understanding that your teachers are increasingly going to see diversity in their classrooms in terms of cultural diversity and in terms of students with disabilities, and we don't really provide well enough, I should say. It happens, but we need to make it more so the training to understand how best to deal with those classrooms with the diversity. I think the other thing that's important that we're seeing a lot of now is around technology and how do you actually, you can't just give a student a Chromebook and expect wonderful things to happen. You have to integrate that technology into your instructional plan, into your instructional activities, and how to leverage that. But the beautiful thing is people are open to that. They want to learn that. They want to grow their skills. Part of the challenge is the time, how much time we actually find for professional development. And there are some schools that actually, build in extra days of professional development, and they reap so many great results just by doing that one simple thing. And I think sometimes going back to the funding conversation, I actually see sometimes it's a trade-off that doing more really solid PD that has a sustained and embedded element to it and sacrificing days of instruction with kids in-house actually is a value proposition that favors the professional development.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your question. We could spend probably a whole nother session talking about teacher prep, right? Absolutely, absolutely. So Carol, back to you.
Here I am. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. We encourage you to continue the conversation in the back with coffee and cookies. I even have one little question, and that's
Sure,
about
Carol.
cursive writing, but that's a whole different issue with the technology. Are kids ever going to be able to read and write in cursive again, or is that lost to us? Stone Age. You can view and share today's forum and all of our forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio Channel, and anytime on CMC's website on YouTube. Let's thank our sponsors, the Columbus Foundation, Columbus State Community College, Dispatch Media Group, and partners, League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Columbus. Corbin and Paola Di Maria, please, thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for being here. We look forward to seeing all of you here again next week.